November 14th, 2004, 70 miles off the coast of San Diego. Commander David Fravor is flying a routine training mission when the radio crackles. The USS Princeton has something on its radar, something strange, and they want him to investigate. Fravor banks his FA-18 Super Hornet toward the coordinates. His wingman follows, and as they approach, Fravor sees a disturbance in the water below, a churning, cross-shaped area of whitewater, clearly indicating that something big is below the surface. As he approaches closer, another shape appears among the disturbance. Something odd seems to be hovering just above the agitated waters. White, smooth, no wings, no exhaust, and about the size of his own fighter jet, moving erratically, like it's mirroring his own movements. Fravor descends to investigate, and the object reacts. It rises to meet him, and for a brief moment, they're circling each other, a multi-million-dollar fighter jet and a perfectly smooth, oval-shaped something that just shouldn't exist. Then the object does something Fravor will describe as physics-defying. It accelerates, but not gradually, instantly. One moment it's there, the next, it's gone, only to reappear 60 miles away in less than a minute. The USS Princeton tracked the whole thing on radar, but here's the detail that most people miss. Before Fravor ever saw that object in the air, the Princeton's radar had been tracking something under the water. For 2 weeks, they detected objects dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, only to disappear below the waterline, as if continuing their descent into the ocean. The object, which became famously known as the Tic Tac, wasn't just a UFO. It was something that moved between air and water, as if the laws of physics didn't apply. There was no change in momentum, as whatever was being tracked simply never entered the water. And it wasn't the first time. Not even close. For decades, Navy ships, submarines, and coastal observers have reported objects in our oceans that move at impossible speeds, dive to crushing depths, and transition between water and air without a splash. We even have records of objects entering into a third domain without any signs or symptoms of the transition. Space. Enigma, a major UFO reporting platform, just released a comprehensive database of these underwater encounters. Centuries of reports, modern military testimony, geographic patterns that just can't be ignored. We've been spending a lot of time looking up for answers. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place? What if the real story is beneath the surface of the water that literally covers the most of our planet? The same oceans that we have only explored roughly 20% of. Welcome back to Infinite Rabbit Hole.
Imagine that this line represents a time, present 1985, future, past. Prior to this point in time, somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985. Alternate to you, me, and Einstein. But reality for everyone else.
Welcome back to Infinite Rabbit Hole. I'm Jeremy Sosha, and with me is my co-host Jacob Owens. Before we jump in, if you're enjoying the show, please hit the like button. It really helps us with the algorithm and gets this content in front of more people. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We drop new content every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what we've got coming up. For those just joining us, this is your weekly briefing on the Unexplained. Every week, we bring you the most credible, verified stories from the fringes, the phenomena that the mainstream media either ignores or gets wrong. UFOs, cryptids, consciousness research, government conspiracies if it challenges what we think we know about reality. We're covering it. And if you're a longtime listener, you know we've been through some changes. We're now running a consistent format. A news briefing covering the week's most significant fringe stories, followed by a deep dive investigation where we really dig into one topic with multiple sources and serious research. Here's the thing. No sensationalism. No clickbait. Just the evidence, the questions, and the mystery. Today's briefing covers 4 stories, and they're all significant. First, a groundbreaking study found 944 cases where Bigfoot and UFO sightings occurred in the same location within 72 hours of each other. This isn't anecdotal anymore. Someone has finally crunched the numbers, and the correlation is striking. Second, Skinwalker Ranch just wrapped up season 6, and while it's packaged as entertainment, the scientific team documented some findings that deserve serious attention, including a massive invisible phenomenon encompassing the entirety of the property, a mysterious 1.6 gigahertz signal, and heat-resistant ceramic buried deep underground. Third, a former senior analyst at the Bank of England has publicly urged the institution to prepare for potential financial collapse in the event of alien disclosure. Yes, mainstream financial institutions are now treating this as a serious possibility. And fourth, a physicist just published research claiming that human consciousness arises from the brain resonating within the quantum vacuum, also known as the 0-point field. By the way, this is testable science that could finally explain the famous hard problem of consciousness. Then we're going deep on something we rarely discuss on the show. Unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. Objects moving through our oceans at impossible speeds, diving to crushing depths and transitioning between water and air without disturbance. Enigma just released a major database documenting centuries of these encounters, and the implications are staggering. Because if the U.S. Navy has been tracking this for decades, and if these objects exhibit the same physics-defying capabilities as aerial UAPs, we need to talk about what that actually means. We start, as always, with your briefing on what is currently going on in the world of the unexplained. But before we do that, Jacob.
What up, cuh?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Right after we get this episode done, I'm going to bed because I have to drive 10 hours tomorrow to go pick up a Maine Coon kitten. So it's going to be a long day.
He's going to get a kitty cat, everybody.
Yeah, I'm meeting the breeder at the Iowa 80. It's apparently the world's largest truck stop. And all my coworkers said I have to go to the Chrome store and get a pair of truck nuts. So I think I'll do that.
Okay.
I was like, the Chrome store. They're like, yeah, like everyday objects, but they're chromed. And I was like, huh. He's like, the truck nuts are really cool. You should get some of those. And I was like, yeah, I'll have to put the longhorns back on my brush guard. And I got the bull horns and the nuts.
Well,
so there you go.
You ready to get into some strange occurrences, some strange
Yes,
news,
sir.
current events that the mainstream media is not talking about?
Yep, sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, man. First one on the docket is Bigfoot UFO correlation studies. All right, here's a question. Are Bigfoot sightings and UFO encounters connected? For decades, researchers have noticed something strange. Eyewitnesses reporting both phenomena in the same locations, sometimes within days of each other. But until now, no one had actually crunched the numbers to see if this pattern was real or just mere coincidence. On February 5th, 2026, researchers behind the Sentient Orbs Project published a groundbreaking analysis that's forcing us to rethink how we categorize unexplained phenomena. They combined 2 massive public databases consisting of roughly 4,000 Bigfoot reports from the BFRO. And if you're not familiar with that, that's the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and more than 130,000 UFO sightings from NUFORC, or the National UFO Reporting Center. Here's what they did. Each Bigfoot sighting was treated as an anchor event. The researchers then searched for any UFO reports within a 100-kilometer radius in a 72-hour window of that Bigfoot encounter. If this was all random chance, you'd expect maybe a handful of matches. Instead, they found 944 correlation cases where both phenomena appeared close together in time and space. Let me give you some specifics. Around 10 incidents occurred on the same day and roughly at the same exact time. 485 cases happened within 1 day of each other, and the rest fell within that 72-hour window I had mentioned. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The study highlights several examples that have captured public attention. In October 2013, in Hamilton County, Ohio, a motorist reported a possible Bigfoot sighting near the Little Miami River. Within the same day and the following 24 hours, at least 15 UFO sightings were logged nearby. Witnesses mostly described orange fireballs splitting into multiple objects and performing precise aerial maneuvers. Another case occurred in August 2006 near Mount Rainier in Washington State. A forest worker reported a strange encounter in the heart of Bigfoot territory, the Pacific Northwest. Within 3 days, there were 6 UFO sightings in that area, including reports of a black triangular craft and erratically moving lights. The researchers are careful to stress that this is exploratory analysis. They're not claiming proof of a connection, but the patterns are striking enough that they deserve serious investigation. So what could explain this? There are a few theories floating around. One is that both phenomena share a common origin, perhaps interdimensional beings or advanced technology that manifests in strange, unknown, or even different ways. Another theory suggests that certain geographic locations act as hotspots for paranormal activity in general, whether that's cryptids, UFOs, or other anomalies, a concept made famous by researcher John Keel in the form of his window area theory. Or maybe it's environmental factors like geological formations, electromagnetic fields, or even weather patterns that might create conditions that influence sightings. Then there's the psychological angle. Some researchers suggest that witnesses who experience one unusual event become more alert and are therefore more likely to notice and report additional anomalies. It's the heightened awareness theory. Critics, of course, argue that this could all be statistical noise. With 130,000 UFO reports and 4,000 Bigfoot sightings spread across the country over decades, some overlap is inevitable just by chance. They also point out potential reporting biases, such as the fact that people interested in one phenomena are more likely to be looking for others as well. But here's what makes this study important. It's the first time someone has systematically analyzed this question with actual data instead of anecdotal observations. The researchers found that certain regions show repeated clustering or places where both types of sightings happen again and again. This raises some very interesting questions as well. If Bigfoot and UFOs are connected, what does that tell us about the nature of these phenomena? Are we dealing with flesh and blood creatures and physical craft, or something more exotic? Could Bigfoot sightings actually be encounters with the occupants of UFOs? There's a long history in UFO literature of witnesses describing quote-unquote hairy hominoids associated with craft sightings. For a specific instance, I highly recommend looking up Stan Gordon's research into the Chestnut Ridge case in Pennsylvania. Or flip it around, could some UFO sightings actually be misidentified encounters with unknown cryptids that exhibit unusual behaviors or even bioluminescence? What comes to mind for me here is the concept of atmospheric beasts, such as rods or atmospheric jellyfish, that are theorized to be plasma-based or even energy-based life forms. The study also identified potential geographic hotspots, areas where both phenomena cluster could become prime locations for future research. If there are underlying environmental or geological factors, those places offer the best chance of finding them. What this study really does is challenge the way we compartmentalize unexplained phenomena. For too long, Bigfoot researchers and UFO investigators have operated in separate worlds. This data suggests that maybe we should be looking at the bigger picture, a picture that includes a broader spectrum of high strangeness that doesn't fit neatly into our already established categories. The researchers plan to continue this work, refining their methodology and expanding their data set. They're calling for more rigorous controls and independent verification. But even in its current form, this analysis represents a significant step towards treating these questions with the seriousness they deserve. Jake, what's your take on this, man? Does 944 correlations suggest something real, or are we seeing patterns there that don't really exist?
I agree with the coincidental overlap theory that if there was a linkage, that there would be, the numbers would be higher than a handful out of 130,000 or a handful out of 4,000. However, that's not to say that we haven't had folks on here and have talked about stories before where there was a linkage between the two. But I disagree with what in that portion that quote, they point out that the potential reporting biases, such as the fact that people are interested in one phenomenon, are more likely to be looking for others as well. End quote. I think that finding Bigfoot would be really cool, and I could care less about the aliens. So, or I couldn't care less about the aliens. So I wouldn't fit into that category either. If I saw Bigfoot, I don't think I would be also looking, be like, oh, is there going to be a UFO that shows up? Unless I had this preconceived notion that they were linked together, in which case, I might, or my brain might just say, hey, now there's, I don't know, create a circumstance in which those two things happened at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, who knows? It could be the same thing. They could be extraterrestrial chimeras. The ship lands, drops them off. Ship, starts taking off, and someone stumbles across one, sees the ship at the same time. Oh my gosh, and then they say, oh, they're linked, and then everyone else is like, no, they're not, you idiot. It's like, no, I literally watched them come out of the spaceship. They were glowing like glow in the dark sticky stars on a kid's,
like the
kid's
Kelly
bedroom
Greenman
wall.
Oh well, we don't. I don't know. We tend to disagree on a lot of things, but I do agree with you is that I don't necessarily believe that these are correlated. We agree also just from past conversations that UFOs most likely don't have an extraterrestrial origin, meaning in the standard definition that they're coming from a different planet. I really like, especially in this case where we're talking about cryptids such as Bigfoot and UFOs and the possible correlation between the two, I really like the alternate dimension or the multiple dimensional theory where these things just live in a different plane of existence and somehow bleed through into ours at times. Now, I had mentioned John Keel's window theory there in the write-up, and if anybody really wants a good idea of what John Keel is talking about in that with that theory, highly recommend most of his books, really, but Trojan Horse and The Eighth Tower, those two are going to be your real introduction, specifically Trojan Horse, into the idea of these window areas and the ultra terrestrials that he talks about. Now, do I believe, because I know there's a lot of people that believe Bigfoot are extraterrestrials and they come from these UFOs, they land, they come out and they do what they have to do. You have to look at the bulk findings of Bigfoot encounters, right? the majority of Bigfoot encounters have absolutely nothing to do with UFOs, and the same thing vice versa. I don't think that we're looking at Bigfoot and we're seeing the occupants of UFOs. We see them out in the middle of nowhere in the woods in our backyards, cruising through the tree line enough to support that they're not some ultra high technical being. Okay, these creatures live in the woods, and that's my honest opinion, is that they're natural, whether it be from our dimension or our plane of existence or another. I do not think that they're flying around in UFOs. I think that the entities, the two UFOs and Bigfoot, are completely separate. I don't think that they have anything in common with each other except for the possibility of the alternate dimensional theories or the ultra-terrestrials that John Keel talks about. That's pretty much it for me.
Well, I was just thinking, I know Jeff's not here. He hasn't been here for a minute. And he's supposed to come back, for anyone listening.
Yes.
He's in the process of moving and, doing all that sort of stuff. But so let me throw something out here that's from his wheelhouse, because you brought that up. You said extraterrestrials, but not in the sense of aliens from off planet, right? But in a interdimensional sort of sense. The thing that he always touts is extra terra, extra land, hollow earth type stuff. So what's to say that the aliens aren't necessary, or the UFOs aren't necessarily picking up, or whoever the pilots of the UFOs aren't necessarily picking up, their occupants aren't the Bigfootses, but instead they are in a relocation process to some degree of taking animals to and from the hollow earth and dropping them in places. So people see them. It's not like think of like if you had to I don't know, relocate a nuisance grizzly bear. And they just pick them up and they're like, okay, we're gonna take you over here.
Oh man, that'd be great. Like these
and it's basically like the indigenous tribes watching a helicopter fly over and drop off an animal in a cage, release it, and then fly off, and they go back to their friends. They're like, I just saw a spaceship release one of those big old things that are in the woods, and everyone's like, yeah, okay. What do you think about that?
Let's kill him. He's got ghosts in his blood.
What do you think about that, though? I mean,
dude, you know what? It's hilarious. It is, but at the same time, it's honestly not that bad of it's really not. Yeah. It's really not. Think about it, man. We have nuisance black bears in our neighborhood.
Or even like breeding programs. Okay, we're watching the situation. The animals that are no longer residing in the hollow earth with the rest of the creeps are, roaming out here. These populations are getting a little bit low, so we're going to transplant viable males or viable females from one tribe to another.
Right. Well, let's just say that the whole Admiral Byrd thing, or even the Richard Sharp Shaver story, is true, right? And that we have these gigantic Symes holes at the north and south pole of our planet, that these UFOs or flying saucers or whatever they are that escape from the inner Earth, and they come out here to visit, and they come tell us to knock it off whenever we explode atomic or nuclear weaponry. What if what we know as Bigfoot are just sub biological critters, and they're nuisance animals down there, and they're just like, you know what, this one keeps digging in our trash cans, so we're just gonna go take it to where it can't get to our trash cans anymore, and we're gonna go dump it off at Mount Rainier.
It's not a crazy thing, because if you look into like the tribal sort of lands and their instances, I mean, there's been ones in Arizona where it's like, I watched them under the street lamp just digging through the dumpster, and it's just like, what a pain in the butt. You got to clean that up after.
The casino The casino CCTV footage from a long time ago. They had that Bigfoot ripping through their trash cans. If that was a bear, they would have went out there, captured it, and moved it out into, you know, some national park somewhere, or, you know, state park somewhere, and be like, all right, be free, little man. Get out there.
Too familiar with us. Get out of here. So yeah, what if they're just nuisance a-holes in the hollow earth, and so they're just transplanting them other places, or it's a breeding program and we just happen to be witnessing it from time to time?
Ah, man, the breeding program, I think it's fun to think about, but the nuisance animal from the sub earth is it's funny. It's funny, but at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe we'll keep that in the hat. That's not a bad theory, man. It's really, really not.
I hope Jeff's listening and he can that, you know, his voice is still viable here.
We'll see. I don't. I got to argue with you on what Jeff would have brought up. Jeff, I think, would have came more from the flat Earth side of things, beyond the ice wall.
Beyond the ice wall, sure, yeah.
But I do like the. That's awesome. That's phenomenal. If somebody does a cryptid comic book, there's your storyline. Take it. Unless Jake wants to claim it right now.
Nah.
I mean, come on, that would make a really awesome, like, what do they call them?
Was it graphic novel or
graphic
something?
novels? Yeah, come on, man. Just like the nuisance Bigfoot in the hollow earth, and then we're just like throwing them out there with the humans. It's like, fuck it. Get out there.
Get out. Go be with them. Go deal with them for a little bit until you're ready to behave again. Then we'll come get you. Yeah, we're the like any sci-fi movie where they send you to the mines on like a distant planet. That's what the rest of Earth is. You've been kicked out of Eden. You're being a nuisance. We'll come get you when your sentence is done. You go dig through the trash at the casinos.
Bad Bigfoot.
Bad. Spritz them with water.
All right, you ready for the second segment? All right. Skinwalker Ranch. If you've been following fringe phenomena for any length of time, you know the name. A 512-acre property in the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah. That's been called the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on Earth. For decades, it's been the site of reported UFO encounters, cryptid sightings, bizarre electromagnetic anomalies, cattle mutilations, and a plethora of phenomena that have left even trained scientists completely baffled. Season 6 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch just wrapped up, and while yes, it is a TV show, the scientific team behind it made some serious discoveries that deserve serious attention, regardless of how they're packaged for entertainment. So let's separate the science from the spectacle and talk about what they actually found. The team is led by Brandon Fugel, who purchased the property in 2016, along with principal investigator Eric Bard and astrophysicist Dr. Travis Taylor. These aren't fringe researchers. Taylor has worked for NASA and the Department of Defense. The investigations involve actual scientific equipment, spectrum analyzers, radiation detectors, GPS systems, thermal imaging, and high-speed cameras, just to list a few of them. Season 6 biggest revelation centers on what the team calls the bubble, or the massive invisible phenomenon. For years, they focused on an area of the ranch known as the Triangle, which is a specific zone where UAP encounters, equipment malfunctions, and unexplained medical episodes have been concentrated. This season, they detected something they hadn't been able to measure before, a large-scale phenomenon that encompasses not just the Triangle, but much of the property. Using smoke during a massive bonfire experiment, they were able to visualize something affecting the air itself, distortions and patterns that shouldn't exist under normal atmospheric conditions. They also detected a signal at a frequency of 1.6 gigahertz. This is a specific repeating signal that the team believes may represent some form of communication or energy transmission. The source of the signal remains unidentified, but its consistency suggests it's not natural background radiation. Underground, the team made another significant discovery: heat-resistant ceramic material buried deep inside what has been famously called the mesa, a ridge that overlooks the property. The ceramic was found at depths and in configurations that don't match natural geological processes. The question is, who put it there and why? The medical effects documented this season are particularly concerning. Multiple team members experience acute symptoms when working in certain areas of the property, such as severe headaches, radiation burns, and sudden illness. These reports are backed up by medical evaluations and dosimeter readings showing elevated radiation exposure. Now let's talk about what makes Skinwalker Ranch different from typical paranormal areas with extraordinary claims. This property has a documented chain of ownership and investigation. In 1996, billionaire Robert Bigelow purchased the ranch specifically to study the phenomena. He established the National Institution for Discovery Science, or NIDS, and deployed a scientific team to monitor the property 24/7 for years. The research led to the involvement of the DIA, or Defense Intelligence Agency, through a program called the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program, aka AWSAP. From 2008 to 2010, the U.S. government spent $22 million studying UAPs, and a significant portion of that investigation focused on Skinwalker Ranch. For more on this, you must read a book called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by James Lakatsky, Colm A. Kelleher, and George Knapp. James Lakatsky, a Defense Intelligence Agency official, visited the ranch and had what he later described as a supernatural experience. That visit convinced him, as well as Senator Harry Reid, that the phenomena at the ranch deserved serious investigation. The government program that followed produced classified reports, many of which remain unreleased. So this isn't just folklore. The U.S. government invested significant resources in studying this location. They documented phenomena they couldn't explain, and when the program ended, private research continued. Brandon Fugel's team has now spent years building on that foundation. They've documented UAP sightings on radar and thermal imaging. They've recorded electromagnetic anomalies that equipment shouldn't be able to produce. They've measured radiation spikes with no identifiable source. The 1.6 gigahertz signal is particularly intriguing because it's in a frequency range used for communications and GPS. If it's a natural phenomenon, it's one that almost perfectly mimics advanced technological signals. If it's not natural, then something or someone is transmitting on that frequency from or near the property. The underground ceramic discovery raises questions about the ranch's history. The Ute and Navajo tribes have long considered this area cursed or inhabited by malevolent entities, aka the Skinwalkers of Navajo legend. But what if there's a physical basis for those legends? What if there's something buried there that predates modern occupation? Season 6 also documented multiple UAP sightings with multiple witnesses and sensor confirmation, objects appearing and disappearing on radar, thermal signatures showing craft-like shapes moving at impossible speeds. The team has also documented what they call the hitchhiker event, which is a term used to describe phenomena that seem to follow researchers home, such as equipment malfunctions, unusual dreams, unexplained illnesses, as well as visitations by a spectrum of anomalies. This pattern was heavily documented during the NIDS years as well, and suggests that whatever is happening at the ranch isn't entirely localized to the property. For a deeper dive on this concept, I highly recommend the book Hunt for the Skinwalker by two of the same authors who wrote the previously mentioned book, Colm A. Kelleher and George Knapp. Critics will point out that this is a reality TV show, and that's fair. Entertainment value does matter to the History Channel. But the underlying data, such as the radiation readings, the signal detections, the GPS anomalies, and thermal imaging, is not fabricated. They can't fake a spectrum analyzer reading or a dosimeter measurement. The question is interpretation. The team presents these findings as evidence of something extraordinary. Skeptics argue that each anomaly might have a conventional explanation, even if we haven't identified it yet. But when you have multiple types of anomalies occurring repeatedly in the same location over decades, at some point, the the conventional explanations start to strain credibility. Season 7 has been confirmed for summer of 2026. Fugel has stated publicly that the investigations will continue and expand. They're planning more aggressive experiments, deeper drilling, and more comprehensive sensor coverage. So, Jake, we know you've been skeptical of Skinwalker Ranch in the past. Does season 6's data change your perspective at all, or are we still just watching scientists chase anomalies that will never be explained?
No, I'm definitely gonna have to look into this. I wasn't aware that there was a season 6 that came out. Because I find it interesting for entertainment value. My biggest hiccup has always been that, yeah, but it's a TV show, right? And so it's like they're not gonna do an entire season where nothing happens. And just because someone has a history of being, a professional to some degree or many degrees in, NASA or whatever it is, doesn't mean that they can't then become a, reality TV show actor just
Yeah.
because they have a background in things, right?
Yeah.
People change professions like that all the time. Right, so you see people go from the music industry to the movie industry and back and forth and, all these sorts of things, TV shows, young actors growing up, and now suddenly they're into music and all this sort of stuff, right? So, I mean, it's just a constant, like, what's the next thing to kind of fill that bubble for myself and help me make money, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't do that, and so that's always been my biggest hiccup is that what seemed like nothing more than a TV show where they're gonna show a couple blurry lights and, like, someone's gonna say, "Oh, well, I woke up with a splitting headache and an upset stomach, and I don't know what happened to me," type stuff, and it's like, "Okay, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that that actually happened. They're just saying that it did," right? Um, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna excuse me, I'm definitely gonna have to go back and watch it, because I'd like to see, but I don't know because I don't think that I have seen in any of the congressional hearings or anything like that where someone said, "Well, if you look at the video here from Skinwalker Ranch, you can see clearly that the UAPs exist." No one's doing that. So what that tells me is that it doesn't feel like they're credible in that space
Mhm.
where someone's going to use them and their findings for evidence for their arguments towards or against uh the existence of UAP, or aliens or some sort of a paranormal phenomenon. Now I could be wrong, but that's just what I've observed. So unless it goes from that realm of a TV show on the History Channel, which the History Channel used to be just like straight up documentaries, and it's gotten really weird when it started doing ancient aliens and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's getting kind of hokey. You guys are just looking for the next thing to fill your pockets, right? This isn't more so like, oh, we're exploring ancient Babylonia at this point anymore. Now we're going into other things. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel about it. What do you think?
I love the topic of Skinwalker Ranch. However,
Well, yeah, you did a 4-part series on it, did you?
well, I did, and I also have an 80-page write-up on it that eventually I'm going to do a full documentary series on it. Um, I don't, I don't like the History Channel show. I think it's fun, it's entertainment, right?
Mhm.
I wish I can say that they're doing legitimate scientific research, but same thing with what you're saying. Okay, just because they've had fancy titles in the past doesn't mean that they haven't bent the knee to the almighty dollar, right?
Sure.
And that's unfortunately the reality of that. However, I absolutely love Skinwalker Ranch and I love everything to do with it. There's amazing documentation for this being a historical place way before NIDS, before Fugel or Bigelow ever owned the property. There was a lot going on here. And there's one book. Let me see if I can
I
find it
saw you
really
back
quick.
there fiddling with all your books. You're like, this one and this one and this one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like. Oh, it's right here. Um, there's a book called The Utah UFO Display. It's by Frank Salisbury. This book talks about UFOs specifically from the Uinta Basin and the area of Skinwalker Ranch prior to any of this happening. This is a reprint of the book, so that's why it looks new, but you definitely can look into this if anybody's interested. I wish I had the original publication date. I don't know if you can look that up, Jake, real quick. The book's called the Utah UFO Display by Frank Salisbury, and see if you could find an original publication date on that. But it highlights a ton of really strange shit, especially, I mean, not just UFO related, but also cryptid related and other phenomena that just plagues this area of northeastern Utah. Now, if anybody wants a really good, what'd you find?
I found the original book, the original cover.
Yeah.
I can screen share real quick.
Yeah, share it with the listeners.
With the listeners. The window. This one.
Yeah, that's it. That is the original book. Damn, $96, huh? I might have to buy that. I might have to buy it. But yeah, it's a much older book. There is a reprint that you can get off of Amazon for like $15 or something. I think that's what I paid for it. It is a direct replication of it. There's no changes really in
publication
the book.
Date 1974.
There you go. See?
Yeah.
So
Internet Archive right here.
Yeah, there's a lot of documented anomalies happening in this area of northeastern Utah. Now, if you want a more modern look at this that's not so History Channel, if you will, there is a there's a foursome. We'll call it a foursome. Fuck it. A foursome of books that I highly recommend. Starting off with Hunt for the Skinwalker. This is what I mentioned in my write-up, by Colin Kelleher and George Knapp. This is your introduction to Skinwalker Ranch. If you're into the Skinwalker Ranch, get this. Okay. There's an author by the name of Ryan Skinner, he has a whole spectrum of books on Skinwalker Ranch. In my opinion, he misses the mark a little bit and it gets a little sensationalized, although I don't want to take away from his research. I do appreciate his research and I have found some really good information from his books, but if you want your all-encompassing informational book on Skinwalker Ranch, Hunt for the Skinwalker is where you need to go. Now, as a direct sequel to that book, and yet they're not necessarily talking heavily about Skinwalker Ranch, but it is talked about. This book right here, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, is written by two of the same authors, Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, but also includes James Lukatsky. Now, there is a third book in the series by the same three authors, and this one is called Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Programs. Now, these books go over the programs such as OSAP, ATIP, APRO, Arrow, Project Blue Book, Grunge, all of them. Okay, it literally touches base on everything, the entire history of UFOs, and where the real connection is to Skinwalker Ranch. Every one of those three books mentions Skinwalker Ranch pretty heavily. Now, there is a book out there, a fourth book that I like to include in this collection because it so heavily talks about Skinwalker Ranch, and it also ties into the same programs that they're talking about in these books right here. OSAP, ATIP, Arrow, they're all mentioned in these books, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because a lot of people don't like this guy, but Lou Elizondo's Imminent. This book talks about Skinwalker Ranch quite a bit, and the amount of cross information between this book and those three books is incredible. I've even told people that personally, I would never recommend anybody read Imminent unless they've read these other 3 books, or at least the first 2. The third one, not so much. But in order to really grasp what Lou Elizondo's talking about as a key member of the ATIP team, you need to understand the birth of OSAP and their direct, intricate doings with NIDS and Skinwalker Ranch and their origins. It's very much highly recommended reading from me. If that means anything to you, I highly recommend those books. I love Skinwalker Ranch. I will watch the shows. I've watched the show, but I'm in no way, shape, or form a fanatic of the show. I watch the show because I like to stay current and see what else there could possibly be there. I like to see visuals of the property. You know, I like to see the stuff that they're talking about in these books and other books that I have. But it's a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up. I was like, is the History Channel reliable anymore? And the AI overview says the History Channel is generally considered not reliable or academic. Considered not a reliable or academic source for factual history, having shifted heavily towards entertainment, reality television, and sensationalized pseudoscientific or speculative programming. While some documentaries remain, the network is criticized for prioritizing ratings over accuracy. And apparently there's a lot of actual like archaeologists and people and historians that are like, these people are constantly putting out just incorrect things, saying that it's factual just for viewership purposes. Like,
And
it shouldn't be taken as this is like, actually real, this is reality what they're talking about, because they've shifted so hard, which is unfortunate.
They've built an empire of entertainment on top of something that has legitimate history.
Right.
And Skinwalker Ranch it's that sweet spot where you can access a lot of information from its past, where the documentation of its strange, phenomenal history and anomalies are very well documented. Very well documented. I mean, there's a lot more than the 5 books that I went over with just in the last couple minutes. It starts with the UFO, or the Utah UFO display by Frank Salisbury. That's really like the beginning of where all this takes place. But I mean, dude, look at the area. The area is the same place where the Mormon Church was really, where it blew up. Where there's why do I always draw a blank on this? What's that freaking secret society that Jeff always talks about?
The Illuminati?
No.
The ones that worship the owls?
The Masons.
Oh, the Masons. Okay.
I mean, there's Masonic symbols etched into cliff rocks or rock cliffs, literally all over the basin. I mean, there's some really strange stuff that's happened there. And then you throw in the entire history of the Skinwalker and the Yidanamushi, and then the whole war between the 2 native tribes there, the Utes and the Navajo. It's incredible. It really is. It's very, very interesting, and I don't like. I'm not in love with the idea that the History Channel has done this to Skinwalker Ranch, because it is a very interesting place, and I actually really do love it. I love learning about it, love the history of it, but I hate that it's become sensationalized.
Well, it's not to say that, with my reservations, I'm not saying that nothing happens there, right? I'm not saying, like, yes, historically, that place was significant for the things that you just mentioned, right? I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but, and I'm not saying that today nothing is occurring there, right? Seismic activity or, weird, energy readings, things like that. But what I am saying is that I don't know how much of that is actually like, this legit happened today. The information that we're providing to you is because this is what we've actually found, or because we're making it seem like it did for views, for clicks, and things like that, right? Like, okay, you're getting a 1.6 gigahertz signal. Someone could be producing that from their computer and being like, "Oh, the readings on our measuring device is saying that there's a signal coming through." And it's just like, okay, well, you're literally showing that you're reading this, but you're not saying where the signal's coming from. Is that because you don't know, or because it's like a ghost hunting TV show? It's just like, "Oh, something touched me."
I
Did it?
do
You know?
recommend, like, if
You know what
you
I'm
guys
saying?
are interested in a 1.6 gigahertz signal, definitely watch the show.
Yeah,
They do a better job at kind of proving, bunny air quotes, that this is coming from somewhere not from them.
sure.
But again, there's technology's crazy, man. Like you said, it literally could be being cast by a computer right next to them. Um, and I hate to say it, but I would hope this isn't the case. But maybe they don't even know it's from the computer that they're sitting next to.
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm a avionics technician on airplanes, and there's been circumstances where it's like, was I actually looking at this correctly? Did I spend 10 hours doing nothing? Like, is it? No, no, no.
You
I'm
get
good.
those
I'm
ghost
good.
gripes, man.
Yeah,
Gotta
right.
love them. Before we move on to the next section, I do want to give a book recommendation for the UFO Bigfoot stuff from Stan Gordon. The book's called Silent Invasion. The tagline is the Pennsylvania UFO Bigfoot Casebook. This is, if you want to learn about Chestnut Ridge or anything, Pennsylvania Bigfoot UFO relation, Stan Gordon is the guy to go to. He's been researching this for many, many years. And that book right there is gold when it comes to just the topic of these two and how they intermingle.
Okay, cool.
You ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
I like this story. This one's really, really fun. Here's a sentence I never thought I'd say on this show. A former senior analyst at the Bank of England has urged the institution they are employed by to prepare for potential financial collapse in the event of alien disclosure. Let that sink in for a moment. They're not talking about a UFO researcher or a fringe blogger or even some stupid podcast. This is Helen McCaw, who worked as a senior analyst in financial security at one of the world's most respected financial institutions, and in January 2026, she publicly warned the Bank of England's governor to create a contingency plan for what might happen to the global economy if the United States discloses the existence of alien intelligence. This is significant for several reasons, but primarily because it represents mainstream institutional acknowledgement that disclosure is no longer a fringe concept. It's now something serious people in serious positions are treating as a genuine possibility. McCaw's background gives her credibility. She spent years analyzing financial security threats, the kind of systematic risks that could destabilize markets or trigger economic crises. Her job was literally to think about worst-case scenarios and how to prepare for them. And apparently, she's concluded that alien disclosure falls into that category. So what's her concern? The basic argument goes like this. If the U.S. government were to confirm the existence of non-human intelligence, whether that's through recovered craft, biological entities, or ongoing contact, it would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. That kind of paradigm shift would have ripple effects across every sector of society, including the global economy. Think about the immediate reactions. Religious institutions would face existential questions. Scientific paradigms would need revision. Geopolitical power dynamics could shift dramatically depending on what's disclosed and who has access to any related technology. And all of that uncertainty creates market instability. Financial markets hate uncertainty. They function on predictable patterns, risk assessment, and investor confidence. A disclosure event would inject massive amounts of uncertainty into the system. How do you price assets in a world where the fundamental assumptions about technology, resources, and humanity's future have just changed. McCaw's warning McCaw's warning specifically mentioned financial collapse, which suggests she's thinking about systematic risk, not just market volatility, but the potential for cascading failures across interconnected financial systems. Bank runs, currency devaluation, credit freezes, all of which are the kind of crises that require central bank intervention. Now let's put this in context with what's actually happening in the U.S. government. The 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, which we covered in our last episode, includes specific mandates requiring the Pentagon to disclose UAP encounters going back to 2004. Going back to 2004. Congressional hearings have featured whistleblowers claiming the government possesses recovered craft and non-human biologics. The stigma around this topic has eroded to the point where serious lawmakers are demanding transparency. We're in a very different place than we were even 5 years ago. The conversation has shifted from do UFOs exist to what does the government know and when will they tell us? McCaw's warning suggests that people in positions of institutional power are taking the possibility of disclosure seriously enough to start planning for it. But here's the really interesting part. Her warning assumes disclosure would be destabilizing. Is that necessarily true? It depends entirely on how disclosure happens and what is actually disclosed. If the U.S. government confirms that unknown objects have violated our airspace but maintain that they don't pose a threat and we don't understand their origin, that's one scenario. Markets might wobble, but it wouldn't necessarily collapse the system. It's uncertainty, but manageable uncertainty. If disclosure includes confirmation of recovered technology that's centuries or millennia beyond our current capabilities, well, that's a little different. It implies that our technological development or energy infrastructure, our entire industrial base, might be based on paradigms that are about to become obsolete. That's the kind of revelation that could trigger genuine economic upheaval. And if disclosure includes ongoing contacts, such as actual communication or cooperation with non-human intelligence, then we're in completely uncharted territory. In that case, the questions would be, who speaks for humanity? What agreements have we made? What technology has been shared? Those questions would have profound economic, political, and social implications. McCaw's perspective is worth considering because it comes from someone who thinks about systematic risk professionally. She's not asking, is this real? She's asking, what happens if it's real and the public finds out? That's a rational approach to scenario planning. The fact that she felt compelled to make this warning publicly suggests she believes the probability of disclosure is high enough to warrant preparation. Remember, financial institutions prepare for all sorts of low probability, high impact events. They run stress tests for market crashes, cyber attacks, natural disasters. McCaw is essentially arguing that alien disclosure should be added to that list. This also speaks to a broader trend: the normalization of UAP disclosure as a serious topic. When former intelligence officials, military personnel, and now financial analysts are publicly discussing this possibility, it signals a shift in how institutions perceive the likelihood and potential impact of disclosure. The question for the Bank of England, and by extension central banks and financial institutions globally, is what preparation actually looks like. Do you create contingency plans for market interventions? Do you coordinate with other central banks on a global response? Do you game out scenarios where the disclosure of advanced technology disrupts entire industries? But I have an even deeper question. If institutions are planning for disclosure, does that suggest that they have information that we don't? McCaw's warning doesn't explicitly say she knows disclosure is imminent, but the specific outline for her concern, directed at the Bank of England governor in a public forum, suggests she's operating on more than just speculation. We're really living through a remarkable moment. The possibility of alien disclosure has moved from fringe conspiracy to institutional planning. Whether that's because disclosure is actually coming or because enough credible people believe it's coming, The result is the same. Serious institutions are taking this seriously. Jake, if you were advising the Bank of England, what would you tell them? Is this a rational concern, or are we getting ahead of ourselves?
I think it's a rational concern because I think that people are irrational.
Hmm.
So that's the problem. It's like Y2K all over again. People are crazy, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's a rational concern to say, hey, regardless of what comes of this, be prepared for financial or market instability because people are crazy. Because people are going to, you know, um, quit their jobs to, because what does it matter anymore? The aliens are real, or they're super big into aliens and aliens aren't real, right? And it's just like, oh, my life's been wasted, right? It's just like one side or the other. It's just like, I think that it is a legit concern because whatever, I'm not a big financial guy as far as like, I dabble in the stock market from time to time, but I'm like, and kind of trade in cryptocurrency and stuff just to make, quick buck every once in a while. But I'm not the guy that can like look at those charts and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Just, yeah, I just don't have that level of intelligence or focus. But I think that um, whatever steps need to be taken to, I guess, protect the global market or, the US dollar or the, what do they have over there? Oh, not the pound anymore. It's the euro, right? Whatever they need to do to protect the euro and its presence in the global market is important, especially in such uncertain times as we're living in now. Because yeah, like you just put in the very end there, um, we've very quickly gone from fringe science to is this possible in like what, a couple of years?
I
Like,
mean, since we've
and
been doing the podcast, really.
well, yeah, but I mean, but people have been like, getting more and more and more stirred up by this possibility of, aliens and things like that. And then maybe on the adverse side of that, maybe the disclosure finds that it has nothing to do with extraterrestrials, inner earth beings, outer earth beings, interdimensional travel, anything like that. And we just find out that there is one country on this earth that has the capability to wipe everyone else off the face of the earth in a matter of moments, right? And then
Mhm.
what does that look like on a global scale? How many people just give up then because, they hate that country or whatever it is? What does that look like? I think that there's so many different ways that disclosure can go, whether it's positive for aliens or negative for aliens or positive for interdimensional beings or negative or positive for super technologies we have here or negative or whatever it is, that any institution that's worth its weight in gold, especially the financial institutions, because that's
Mhm.
kind of what they do, they need to be prepared for that, right? And so I I don't know if a market analyst would have any sort of insight into, if the aliens are real, but I doubt it. But she's doing her job by saying, "Hey, with all of this tension, be prepared for some crazy times. Hey, maybe invest in gold. Maybe put some money into your savings. Don't,
Mhm.
blow every single paycheck that you have because you don't know what industries are going to get uh twisted or shut down because of the disclosure one way or another. In the same way with AI. AI is going I totally believe it when they say it's going to be eliminating jobs,
Mhm.
right? You're not gonna if AI gets advanced enough, you're not gonna need that lady to do her job because AI will do it for you.
Yep.
To look at market research and stuff like that in a matter of seconds, where you would have to pay this lady, 130,000 a year, 200,000 a year to look at it over the course of 6 months and kind of, figure out the numbers. AI will do it like that. Her job's gone, right? it would behoove of her to have a savings account because she doesn't know if tomorrow her job, who, let's be real, jobs exist to make money, right? Her business says, we don't need you anymore because we have this software that's going to do everything for you and we don't have to pay it. Bye. You know, even if you get
Yeah.
severance, how long is that going to hold you out for? So if there's any sort of an industry that could be disrupted by a natural disaster or craziness in the news or political upheaval or whatever that looks like, it's important for people like her and the people that do that sort of job or any sort of industry to look at that in a lens of this matters because people's, financial stability is at stake. So yes, I do think that it is important. And I do think that she is voicing a legitimate concern. To
Mhm.
what end, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. So you completely changed my approach to this. So I, first, I just want to talk about very briefly what I do when it comes to these scripts, right? When I write these scripts for the news briefings or really anything, I try to touch on all bases. What can anybody possibly say, right? When I write these scripts, this isn't what I think is happening. This is me getting all the information together that I can possibly think of
Mm-hmm.
coming from multiple different people believing multiple different things, and I put it into a script that bounces kind of all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I'm reading the UFO Bigfoot one, right? I have my real thoughts on that is that UFOs and Bigfoot are completely separate anomalies. But when you're reading or when I'm reading that off, I'm painting a picture. We are a podcast, right? And we do want some entertainment value. So I have to put it all out there and get people thinking about possibilities and what other people would possibly think.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that for 5 years with you guys, right? When it comes to the scripts that I write, I try to touch on your voices as a little bit here and there, or try to plant little pieces in there that I know is going to catch Jeff or catch CJ or catch you, and make it so that you guys want to have a talking point. My opinion on this, was simply that it was interesting. I just thought it was interesting, but I think you're right, man. I really, now that I think about it, this was a point that I totally failed to touch on in my script, and you bring up a really valid point. She's probably bringing this up because she knows that the majority, well, I wouldn't even say majority, but there's a really good portion of humanity that's going to lose their fucking shit over this.
Oh yeah.
And it's not necessarily the fact that aliens are being disclosed and that now there's these non-human intelligences, but it's how are people going to react even when a mainstream media news outlet overreacts to this? What if TMZ comes out and says, "Oh man, we're meeting the alien today"? People are going to lose their fucking mind,
Yeah.
right?
You just
And
watch how people react when their favorite team either wins or loses, and they burn down their own cities. Right?
they just burned down Seattle
It's
because
just
they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
this
just,
is I mean, this is a really valid point that you bring up, is that she's probably like, hey, just so you guys know, there's some pretty stupid humans out there, and they're gonna fall for anything that's put out. I mean, look, man, we have the Epstein files being pushed right now. Right. There's all kinds of things being brought to the forefront right now as, what I call the shiny keys. Is like, hey, look at over here.
Mhm.
There's these really cool shiny keys. Look at them. There's alien disclosure. Look. But over here, could be something that could, just for an example, could be Epstein files being released, a little bit at a
Yeah,
time here and
flight
there.
histories, all that sort of stuff, right? Yeah.
They're unredacting some of the names. There's a
Mm.
big petition going on right now to get some of those redacted names publicized. And I could totally see, those people in politics or at the head of these gigantic firms that are on those Epstein reports being like, we need a fucking distraction. We need it.
We
We
need
need
something
we need it
now. Yeah.
now.
Yep.
And guess who would be in the know on that? Financial institutions. They would absolutely be in the know on that. A lot of those financial institutions are the ones that are paying for ad revenue and other expenses for political figures. Um, I mean, they want talking heads in political positions to speak on their behalf so that they can make money.
Well,
And who knows, maybe she does have an inside uh look at, something is coming, because just throwing it out there, man, it could be for anything. It could be a distraction for literally anything. It could
mhm.
be I'm just using the Epstein files as, current events
Well,
kind of thing.
that's like the biggest thing that actually matters because look, I don't care what their party is. If they went to that island and they were diddling kids, fricking hang them off the telephone poles, drag them screaming out of their houses, and let's do the thing right there.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care who you are, like you're gonna get it right, type stuff. And so
Yep.
that's how I feel. That's where my mind's been at, not the aliens or whatever, but. I can also see the other side of that where it's like people are like, okay, well, we've been getting the runaround with this Epstein thing for so long. It's probably never going to happen. These people's names are never going to get revealed, and they're more focused on the alien thing. But either way you look at it, she's doing her job by saying we have disclosures coming from any direction you can look at now. This is a crazy time in the United
Hmm.
States. Just the fact that, like him or hate him, however you feel about him, but President Trump, when he got in, he's like, I'm going to release the JFK files. Like, that's crazy. It's like no one has done that. It's just like, or even him saying that he was going to do that. No one has even talked about that. It's like, it's absolutely insane. So we're in this crazy time frame where somehow, some way, the magic keys are turning the locks to open up all these dirty little secrets, and it's just like
Hmm.
of whatever they may look like. And that makes people freaking crazy.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, I can't cope right now. I'm not going to go to work, you know?
Yeah. And it's all to push AI even faster.
Yeah, that's all it is. But yeah, so I not necessarily the angle that I was going at with where you went, but yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that just having a spatial awareness of what's going on presently in like the highlights and what's capturing people's attention. There's some really, really, really big things going on, and that is a breakout of the norm where
Hmm.
people wake up, they look at their local news, eh, you know, couple robbings, oh, saved a cat out of a tree. Back when news was like that, oh man, there's actually good stories. It wasn't just depressing all the time. But yeah, wake up, drink my coffee, drive to work, go to work, come home, see the family, that sort of stuff. That is a normal day, not I'm gonna scroll through through my, news app and see whose names just popped up on the Epstein registry, right, type stuff. Like, that's like a crazy just wrench right into the frickin', engine block, and there's a lot of institutions out there that should have even if they don't put any weight into it, even if they're like, "Yeah, the aliens are BS, I don't believe in any of that stuff," like me, if I was in that position, I'd be like, "Yeah, well, regardless of how I feel about it, um, we have a lot of people who they might max out all their credit cards to go move into the woods and buy all the guns, who
That's
knows,
that's true. That's very true.
They might do all these things and then we can't find them and we're never going to get paid back. Hey, by the way, we should probably batten down the hatches because there's a bunch of big things coming and people act very irrational when big things happen.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean, it'd be like the H.G. Wells War of the Worlds radio broadcast. People killed themselves,
Oh, yeah.
during that. And I mean, you start releasing that non-human intelligence uh exists, right?
Hmm.
Or quote unquote bunny ears exist. we could see a similar reaction, and it could come in the form of people, doomsday preppers maxing out their credit cards, booking into the woods, or it can come in the form of a lot of life insurance being paid out. It's
Sure, yeah. I
you know
mean, so yeah, I think that she's wise to be aware of what's going on.
I
You
agree.
know?
I do. All right. Damn, we're already an hour and 15 minutes into this.
Well, we need to stop having such deep conversations.
No, it's a good one. This is good.
Yeah.
All right. You ready?
That's it, listeners. Now you're getting yes and no answers.
All right. For our final story before the deep dive, our final story takes us into one of the deepest mysteries in science: consciousness itself. A physicist is making a bold claim that bridges quantum mechanics and human awareness in a way that could fundamentally change how we understand what it means to be alive. In December 2025, physicist Joachim Kepler published a paper in the journal's Frontier in Human Neuroscience titled "On Biological and Artificial Consciousness, a Case for Biological Computationalism." Let me take a breath there. The core argument is fascinating. He suggests that consciousness arises from the brain's capacity to resonate within the quantum vacuum, specifically something called the zero-point field. Let me break down what this means, because it connects neuroscience, quantum physics, and metaphysics in a way that challenges the standard idea that the brain is just a biological machine. The zero-point field is a concept from quantum mechanics. It refers to the lowest possible energy state that exists everywhere in space, even in a perfect vacuum. According to quantum field theory, even empty space isn't truly empty because it is filled with fluctuating quantum fields. This isn't speculation. It is well-established physics with measurable effects. What Kepler proposes is that the brain does not generate consciousness in isolation. Instead, conscious states arise when the brain's structures, specifically the tiny functional units called cortical microcolumns, couple directly with the zero-point field. In other words, consciousness emerges from the brain's interaction with this fundamental quantum background that permeates all of space. This is a radical departure from conventional neuroscience. Most scientists treat consciousness as purely a product of neural activity, like a computer processing information through circuits and signals. Kepler is arguing that consciousness requires this quantum connection. In this view, the brain isn't creating consciousness from scratch. It is acting more like a receiver or a resonator or something that already exists in the quantum vacuum. Now, why is this significant? It addresses what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. We touched on this in last week's episode, but to briefly refresh your memory, the hard problem asks how physical matter produces a subjective experience. We can explain how the brain processes visual information. Light hits the retina, signals travel through the optic nerve, and neurons in the visual cortex activate. But none of that actually explains why you actually experience, for example, the color red. Why does a physical process create a felt sensation? Materialist neuroscience has struggled with this because it tries to explain consciousness as something that just appears once a system gets complex enough. They assume that if you have enough neurons firing in the right patterns, subjective experience just pops into existence. But no one has ever explained the actual mechanism that makes that happen. Kepler's model offers a different answer altogether. Consciousness does not emerge from complexity alone. It emerges from the brain's ability to vibrate in sync with the zero-point field. Conscious experience is what happens when our biological structures interact with this underlying quantum layer. This has profound implications. If consciousness depends on resonating with a field that exists everywhere, then consciousness isn't limited to the brain in a way we typically think. The brain is more like a radio tuning into a signal that is already in the air. This could explain phenomena like near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. If consciousness can interact with a non-local quantum field, then our access to information might not be limited by our physical location. Kepler's paper specifically mentions that his model can be tested. By manipulating conditions in the brain, researchers could explore whether the brain does in fact harness the zero-point field. He proposes systematic experiments to probe the boundaries of this relationship. This isn't the first time scientists have proposed quantum explanations for the mind. For decades, Roger Penrose and Stuart Hamerhoff have argued that tiny structures inside neurons called microtubules might be the key. Their theories suggest that consciousness involves quantum shifts occurring inside the brain itself. Kepler's model is a little different. He is proposing that consciousness comes from our interaction with the vacuum of space itself, not just processes inside of ourselves. This connects our awareness to the fundamental structure of reality at the most basic of levels. This gets very interesting for anyone who follows fringe science. This zero-point field has been a topic in alternative physics for a long time. Some have suggested it could be a source of unlimited energy or the mechanism behind psychic phenomena. The CIA's Gateway process, which we've covered before, talked about consciousness and its accessing of information by tuning into something that beyond ordinary space and time. If Kepler is correct, it provides a scientific framework for how those experiences might actually work. It doesn't prove they are real, but it offers a mechanism that doesn't violate the laws of physics. It also changes how we look at artificial intelligence. If consciousness requires a biological structure that can resonate with a quantum field, then a conscious AI might need more than just better code. You might need to build hardware that replicates the biological quote-unquote antennas of the human brain. Kepler acknowledges that this is early-stage work. The model needs rigorous testing. But what makes it valuable is that it is testable. Unlike many philosophical theories, this proposes specific mechanisms we can investigate. Neuroscientists have long noticed that conscious states are linked to synchronized brain waves. Kepler argues this synchronization isn't just noise, it is the brain reaching the specific frequency needed to plug into the zero-point field. When that connection happens, consciousness emerges. This raises profound questions. More profound questions. If our awareness depends on this quantum connection, what happens when the physical body dies? Does the connection persist in the same form? That is the speculation for now, but it is the kind of question this model forces us to confront. It reframes our entire reality. If consciousness is deeply integrated with the universe at the most basic level, then we aren't separate from the physical world. This echoes ancient traditions that viewed consciousness as the foundation of everything rather than just a byproduct of biology. The scientific response will be interesting. Mainstream science is often skeptical because quantum effects are usually too fragile to survive in the warm environment of a human brain. But Kepler argues that this resonance is a different kind of interaction that doesn't require the same delicate conditions. This paper opens a door. For a long time, we've treated the mind as a byproduct of complexity. Kepler is proposing that we need to look deeper into the very fabric of space to understand what we really are. All right, Jake, your turn. Does this model make sense to you? Are we finally getting closer to understanding consciousness, or are we just adding more complexity to a mystery we'll never fully solve?
Yes.
He did the thing he said he was going to do, everybody.
I did the thing. No, I have no idea what you just read. It makes no sense to me.
Oh.
Just to be completely honest, I'm like, it went right over my head.
Oh.
If if we were all on the same network and we were just tuning into it, then why can't we read other people's thoughts?
That is a good point.
But then again, where does consciousness come from? I don't know.
That
You know,
it's
a good route, I guess.
it's a bigger question, man. There's a lot of stuff going on, and my original real deep dive interest into consciousness really started when I covered the split brain hypothesis by Michael Gazzaniga, and then I took that really deep dive into NDEs. It bothers me, man. Like, it really bothers me. I just don't understand how a glob of meat inside of our skull can harness consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the most basic of definitions of what consciousness can be defined by. I just don't get it. I mean, there's all kinds of different cellular structures and different components of the brain that we don't have in other meat in our body. And the joking comparison that I talked about last week was the piece of
Electrified steak, right?
the
Yeah.
electrified steak at the grocery store. And yeah, I mean, we have different cellular structures inside of our brains. Okay, and it goes beyond neurons. There's a lot of different things. But still, in the biological level of things, it's meat. It's what
Right.
it is. It's protein.
Yeah.
It's just the comparison to the meat at the grocery store is literally just me trying to break it down into a layman's terms of what my thought processes are here. Is that what is so special about the brain? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I don't necessarily believe that we're all just connected to the ether, right? The all-encompassing quantum 0-point field, which is just the existence of everything, really.
Right.
Because we do have those unique viewpoints, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can't just jump into your consciousness. You can't just jump into
Well, I
mine.
don't think that we wouldn't have separate viewpoints at all. We would all think the same thing
It'd
at
be
all
more.
times.
It would be more like a hive mind.
Like all the radios tuned into the exact same radio station. You're all getting
Mhm.
the exact same information at the exact same time because it's just an antenna that's picking up that frequency of whatever, K98 or K-Love or whatever it is, the thing, right? So yeah, there would be not necessarily I can't read your thoughts, but our thoughts are the same because we're getting the exact same information, right? And so it's like,
There's
it's
too
a good
much in
start,
there's too much individualism,
Yeah.
and then you get into other biological critters, like your kitty cat that you're going to pick up tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there's a clear difference, especially intelligence wise, between humans and, let's say, your kitty cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the human brain has an absolute butt ton of neurons per square inch compared to other animals. But how does that
Butt ton.
correlate? Just because that
Yeah.
we have a lot more, you know, how does that actually correlate to more intelligence, to sentience, to a point to where we can communicate verbally and understand each other?
Right.
We can document our history. We can do
We
advanced
can
mathematical problems.
we create art out of forms of expression. Yeah. I mean, it's
Right.
just like completely different than, yeah, you can teach a chimpanzee or a gorilla how to do sign language, but do they know the nuances of creating art without being taught how to do so? Right? Because no
Right.
one taught humans how to express themselves through art and music. They just did it. Right?
Right.
And that's what separates us from other animals. For a limited time, you can teach a gorilla how to do sign language and to paint a picture, but will they, by themselves in nature, decide that this is something that needs to be done to express their own individualism, right? a huge difference.
Right.
Like when people are like, "Oh, well, dogs have consciousness," it's like to a point they might, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say they don't, but it's to a point. It's not, you know. I'm not certain that there's a I
There's
exist and here I am and this is how I know type stuff. It's
yeah.
it's
There's tiers.
basic feelings, right?
And to your point about chimps, right? Just to be the devil's advocate in this, a lot of people would look at that same scenario and be like, well, maybe chimps do express themselves in artwork in different ways. And they look at us and they're like, look at this hairless monkey. They're not even using their own shit.
That's the
I-
best form of expression.
right.
Yeah.
And they're looking at their chimp buddies and they're like, everybody knows you use your own fecal matter, to throw at other chimps. That's art.
That's art. Well,
And-
yeah, maybe.
And it could just be a translational thing. Like we look at it and we're just seeing monkeys flinging shit at each other. But to them, I mean, that could be the chimp version of the greatest artist of all time. You never know.
Picasso. Look at the way the shit landed. Oh man, it's the nuances of the shapes of the shit.
It's just crazy how good he is at this. It's
Man,
incredible.
how does he come up with this?
Yeah. You know what? I want to make babies with that guy. All right.
Gosh.
Look at him peacocking over there, just throwing his shit at the wall. It's just magnificent. It's beautiful. All right. We've been talking for too long.
Yeah.
Now we're just getting slap heavy. All right. Well, since your word's not mine, that flew over your head, we'll just move on to the next one.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, dude.
Okay. All right. The deep dive. Yeah, this one's. We spend a lot of time looking up. I'm going to say that a few times in this. I didn't realize how many times I put this in the script. Anyways, we spend a lot of time looking up UFOs, aerial phenomena, and other objects in the sky. That's where most of our attention goes. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place? What if the real story is happening beneath the surface in the 80% of the Earth's oceans that remain unexplored? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're investigating USOs, or unidentified submerged objects, and the mounting evidence that whatever intelligence is behind UAPs isn't just operating in our skies, it's also in our waters, and it's been there for a very long time. Let's start with the most famous UAP case in modern history, the 2004 Nimitz encounter. Most people know the story. Commander David Fravor and his squadron encountered the Tic Tac object off the coast of San Diego. The object demonstrated flight characteristics that defied physics, such as instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic speeds without sonic booms, and no visual propulsion to conduct any of these incredible movements. But here's the detail that doesn't get enough attention. Before Fravor's aerial encounter, the USS Princeton's advanced radar systems detected something under the water. Senior Chief Kevin Day, who was operating the radar systems on the Princeton, has described what they tracked. For 2 weeks leading up to the Fravor encounter, the ship's Spy 1 radar was picking up objects dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. These weren't ballistic. They were controlled descents. And when they reached the ocean surface, they didn't stop. The radar tracked them going into the water without any change in momentum. On November 14th, 2004, when Fravor was vectored to investigate a strange radar signal, he was surprised to find that there was something under the surface of the water. Fravor himself reported seeing a disturbance just under the surface in the form of a cross-shaped area of churning whitewater, as if something just below the surface was creating the turbulence. Then the Tic Tac object appeared above it. The implication is clear. The object Fravor encountered was either emerging from the water or operating in conjunction with something that was already there. This wasn't just a UFO sighting. It was a transmedium event an object moving seamlessly between water and air, and it's far from an isolated incident. Let's talk about why this matters from a physics standpoint. Because transmedium travel isn't just unusual, it's something we fundamentally and literally don't know how to do. When an object moving at high speed enters water, several things happen. First, there's a massive resistance. Water is roughly 800 times denser than air. The energy required to push through that resistance increases exponentially with speed. Second, there's cavitation in the form of the formation of vapor bubbles due to rapid pressure changes. This creates shock waves and enormous amounts of noise. Third, there's the impact itself. An object hitting water at high speed creates spray, splash, and surface disturbance that's impossible to miss. Our fastest torpedoes use a technique called supercavitation to reduce water resistance. Russia's VA-111 Shkval torpedo creates a gas bubble around itself, allowing it to reach speeds of about 230 miles per hour underwater. It's incredibly loud, leaves a massive trail, and requires specialized launch systems. Compare that to what witnesses consistently report: objects entering or exiting water with no splash, no spray, and typically no disturbance at all. Some reports describe the water seeming to part around the object. Others describe a smooth transition, as if the object isn't experiencing resistance at all. This isn't just advanced technology. This is technology that operates on principles we don't understand. Either these objects are manipulating the water itself, perhaps through some kind of field effect that alters its physical properties, or they're moving through it in a way that bypasses conventional physics entirely. The Nimitz incident occurred in 2004, but USO reports go back centuries. And what's important, and that's important because it establishes a pattern that predates modern military technology. In the 11th century, witnesses in Northumberland, England, reported seeing a fiery object that revolved, ascended on high, and then descended into the sea, repeatedly reappearing off the coast. This account is recorded in medieval chronicles. Now, we can't verify what they actually saw, but the description matches the transmedium behavior reported in modern cases. In 1825, naturalist Andrew Bloxham was aboard the HMS Blonde when he witnessed a red, luminous orb rising from the ocean. He documented it in the ship's log. Bloxham was a trained scientific observer. His job was to record natural phenomena accurately. Whatever he saw, he considered it significant enough to officially document. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, there are scattered reports from ships encountering strange lights underwater or objects that surfaced and then submerged. These reports were often dismissed as sea monsters or bioluminescent marine life, and sometimes even optical illusions. But the pattern changes after World War II, particularly once submarine detection technology advanced. Sonar gave us the ability to see underwater in ways we never could before. And that's when things get really interesting. During the Cold War, both U.S. and Soviet submarines reported encounters with objects that didn't match any known technology. These reports were often classified, but some have emerged over the years through declassified documents and veteran testimony. Soviet submarine commanders described objects that would pace their vessels at depths no known submarine could reach. There are reports of sonar contacts moving at speeds exceeding 200 knots underwater, which is 4 times faster than the fastest nuclear submarines. In 1963, during naval exercises off of Puerto Rico, multiple ships and aircraft detected an object moving underwater at speeds estimated at over 150 knots. The object was tracked for 4 days across hundreds of miles. It would descend to depths of 27,000 feet, far beyond the crush depth of any known vessel, and then return to the surface. At one point, it split into multiple contacts before all the pieces rejoined. This incident was witnessed by crews from multiple ships and recorded on sonar. It's documented in official logs, and to this day, there's no conventional explanation for what those ships were tracking. Fast forward to the 1990s, the Ocean Surveillance Network, or SOSUS, also known as the Sound Surveillance System, was designed during the Cold War to track Soviet submarines. The network used underwater microphones to detect acoustic signatures across vast areas of the ocean. After the Cold War ended, some of this data was declassified for scientific research. Marine biologists analyzing the data discovered something unexpected: anomalous sounds that didn't match any known marine life or human technology. The most famous, something we've covered years ago, called the bloop, which was recorded in 1997 by NOAA. It was one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded, and its source has never been identified. NOAA eventually attributed it to something called ice calving, but that explanation has been heavily disputed. There are other sounds in the record. Julia, which is another topic we've covered, was recorded in 1999. The slow down signal was recorded in 1997. Then there was also the train, the whistle, and the upsweep. And these are just the ones that got public names. All of them remain unidentified. Now, we can't say these are USOs, but they established that there are things happening in the ocean that we don't understand. And some of these acoustic events occurred in areas where USO sightings have been reported. The Enigma database revealed something important. USO sightings aren't random. They cluster in specific geographic areas. The U.S. East Coast shows significant activity, particularly off the coast of Florida and the Carolinas. The Gulf of Mexico has recurring reports. The Pacific Coast, especially near California and the Pacific Northwest, are hotspots. The waters around Puerto Rico and the Caribbean are known for their concentrated sightings. It's the same area where I witnessed something strange myself with my own eyes during a deployment to South America when I was in the Navy. These aren't necessarily areas with the most shipping traffic or the most observers. They're areas where the sightings are consistent and detailed. Interestingly, many of these locations correspond to areas with unusual underwater geography. Deep ocean trenches, underwater canyons, volcanic activity, areas with strong magnetic anomalies. Is that correlation meaningful? We don't know, but it's worth noting. The Puerto Rico Trench is particularly interesting. It's the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean, over 27,000 feet deep, and it's the location of dozens of USO reports over decades. Fishermen, Coast Guard personnel, commercial pilots, in many instances where multiple witnesses have reported seeing objects emerge from the water in that area. In 1963, when the U.S. Navy tracked that object during exercises, it was operating near the Puerto Rico Trench. The object descended to depths that should have crushed any known vessel, then returned to the surface. What if that area isn't just where sightings happen? What if it's where something is based? Let's take some time to address the obvious question here. If these objects exist, where are they coming from? One theory is underwater bases. Before you dismiss that as science fiction, consider the practicality. If you're operating on Earth, but you don't want to be seen, the ocean floor is the perfect location. We've only explored 20% of the ocean floor. The deep ocean is one of the least accessible environments on Earth to us humans. It's dark, it's under crushing pressure, and it's vast. You could hide entire cities down there, and we would never know. The deepest human-occupied descent was in 1960 when the Trieste reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench at a depth of nearly 36,000 feet. Since then, only a handful of submersibles have gone that deep. We've sent more people to the moon than to the deepest parts of our own oceans. If you want to establish a permanent presence on Earth without being detected, you wouldn't do it in the sky where radar can track you. You wouldn't do it on land where satellites can see you. You'd do it underwater in the deep ocean where human access is limited and surveillance is damn near impossible. This could explain the transmedium behavior. If these craft are based underwater, they need to move between the ocean and the atmosphere. Developing technology for seamless transition would be essential. It could also explain why so many UAP sightings occur near water. The Nimitz incident was off the coast of California. East Coast UAP encounters reported by the Navy East Coast UAP encounters reported by Navy pilots have occurred hundreds of times. The Phoenix Lights, one of the most famous mass sightings, occurred in Arizona, but witnesses reported seeing the objects heading southwest towards the Gulf of California. Here's what's becoming increasingly clear. We might not be dealing with two separate phenomena. USOs and UAPs might be the same thing. The capabilities match. Both demonstrate speeds and maneuvers that defy known physics. Both appear on military sensors, but often evade visual confirmation. Both seem to exhibit awareness of being observed, meaning they react to pursuit or they disappear when approached. And critically, many UAP encounters involve water. The Nimitz incident, the 2015 East Coast encounters where Navy pilots reported objects emerging from the ocean, witnesses around the world describing objects diving into lakes, rivers, and oceans. If these are the same craft, it changes how we should be investigating them. The focus has been almost entirely on airspace by using radar tracking, pilot testimony, and studying Air Force encounters. But maybe the real action is happening underwater, and we're only seeing these objects when they surface or when they're transitioning to and from their bases. This also raises questions about how long this has been going on for. If these objects are based underwater, they could have been there for decades, centuries. Hell, they could have been there for even longer, and we would have no way to know. I mean, the historical accounts suggest this isn't a recent phenomenon. The U.S. Navy has been tracking this for a long time. They have sonar data going back decades. They have submarine encounter reports. They have surface ship observations, and they have sensor networks that monitor vast areas of ocean consistently. The Office of Naval Intelligence was specifically mentioned in the congressional mandates for UAP disclosure. Why? Because they're the ones who've been collecting the data. When Congress required the Pentagon to provide information about UAP encounters, they specifically mentioned that this should include events detected by ships and submarines. They know that aerial sightings are only part of the picture. The question is, what does that data show? How many encounters have there been that we don't know about? What have submarines detected at depths that haven't been made public? Senior Chief Kevin Day, the radar operator from the Nimitz incident, has said publicly that the objects they tracked were doing things that, quote, defied the laws of physics as we know them. He's also said that the Navy's responses to the incident suggest this wasn't the first time they'd encountered this phenomenon. If the Navy has decades of USO data, it would explain why the UAP conversation shifted so dramatically in recent years. It's not just that pilots saw something strange. It's that the accumulated evidence from sonar, from radar, whatever other kind of instruments they could possibly use has become impossible to ignore. So where does that leave us? We have historical reports going back centuries describing objects entering and exiting water. We have modern military encounters with sensor data confirming objects moving at impossible speeds underwater. We have geographic patterns suggesting specific areas of concentrated activity, yet again, underwater. We have the physics problem, meaning these objects are doing things we fundamentally don't understand. And we have and we have the transmedium connection. The same objects operating in air and water, suggesting a unified phenomenon rather than separate mysteries. If you take this evidence seriously, several conclusions become hard to avoid. First, something is operating in Earth's oceans that isn't conventional technology. The speeds, the depths, the lack of visible propulsion, the transmedium capability, none of this fits known human technology from any country. Second, this has been going on for a long time. This isn't a recent development. The historical record and the consistency of modern reports suggest an ongoing presence. Third, the ocean might be the key to understanding the broader UAP phenomenon. If there are bases or operations happening underwater, then aerial sightings might just be incidental. We're seeing these objects when they're in transit, not when they're actually doing whatever they're here to do. And fourth, the U.S. Navy and likely other nations' naval forces know more than they're saying. The sensor networks, the classified encounters, the decades of data collection, we aren't speculating at this point. We know they've been tracking this. The big question is, what comes next? Do we get disclosure about underwater encounters the same way we're getting it very slowly about aerial phenomena? Do congressional mandates expand to include USO data? Do we finally get answers about what's been operating in our oceans? Because here's the thing. Like I've said 3 times in this episode already, we've been looking up for answers. But maybe we should have been looking down all along. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface. It's the largest ecosystem on the planet. And we've barely scratched the surface of understanding what's down there. If there's intelligence operating on Earth that wants to remain hidden, the ocean is where they'd be. And the evidence suggests that's exactly where they are. Jake, final thoughts, man. Are we alone in our oceans?
Dude, that write-up is wild. Because, look, I'm going to skip back to, like, almost the beginning. I just want to read this out real quick and just break this down. In 1963, during naval exercises off Puerto Rico, multiple ships and aircraft detected an object moving underwater at speeds of estimated over 150 knots.
Mm-hmm.
The object was tracked for 4 days across hundreds of miles. It would descend to depths of 27,000 feet, far beyond the crushed depth of any known vessel, and then return to the surface. At one point, it split into multiple contacts before all of the pieces rejoined. This incident is witnessed by crews from multiple ships and recorded on sonar. It's documented in official logs, and to this day, there's no conventional explanation to what these ships were tracking. So what this means, so my whole thing, my whole shtick, right, is like the whole demon thing or angel thing, right? They're non-physical
Yeah.
beings, but they can be witnessed, right? Because they're allowing themselves to be witnessed. But you can't track a non-physical spirit on a sonar. It has to be a physical object to have that bounce back to the receiver, right? So that's crazy to me. So I have no idea. That's what I'm saying. Like I know that the standard quip, right, is that, oh, Jake's gonna say they're demons. And yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot to that, or at least a non-physical entity that can be observed from time to time, with its allowing us to do so. Because if it's that advanced, I mean, why wouldn't it be instead of oh, we happen to see it, no, it's allowing us to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this circumstance and in many other circumstances, you can't get sonar data or radar data from a non-physical object because the waves, the signal would pass through it. There'd be nothing to bounce off of to come to the receiver to tell you there's an object so many feet or miles or whatever in front of you, right? So I have no idea.
I was trying to find where I had got. I must have left the book upstairs. It's there's 2 books that I have that are really, really good for USO stuff. And there's a couple others like Uninvited Visitors by Ivan Sanderson, I think touches on USOs. But the books, I had to bring them up here just so I can at least give credit. The one book by Richard Dolan, it's called The History of USOs. It's fucking great. It's such a good
Yeah.
book. It really is. And then there's this kind of, it's another really good book, but it's by an author that really hasn't made a name yet. It's called the book's called Undersea UFO Base, and the author is Preston Dennett. This is also a very this book specifically talks about the Santa Catalina Channel, which I had made mention of there. I just didn't call it the Santa Catalina Channel. But if you really want a really good book on USOs, The History of USOs by Richard Dolan is, at least from the books that I've read, the standard for just getting a really good idea of this phenomenon. And it kind of brings you right up to modern history. I want to say the book's not old either. I want to say it was released last year, if I remember correctly. Or at least it was rewritten last year. But the history goes way back. And it's a multi-volume set. I want to say volume 1 goes back to 1969, but it has mentions of prior to that. I should just bring it up on the Amazon. I have it Googled right now.
Okay. I've got a thought process forming in my brain holes that I need to get out before I lose focus.
Okay.
So the reason why, and tell me when what I'm saying doesn't make sense. I'm just going to say it out loud, what I'm thinking. So the reason why crush depth is so important is because in order to have human occupants, obviously you need to have space for those humans to eat and take dumps and sleep and breathe, right? There has to be air in there. And so what that means is that the force applied to the outside of the vessel is too strong for the force on the inside of the vessel to compensate for. And then that's when you get, I think it was the Ocean Gate submarine that tried to go down to the Titanic and just imploded and eviscerated itself, right? Because the crush depth outside was too strong for the pressure inside. It couldn't, no doubt a carbon fiber hull would have been totally fine if you could equalize the pressure, but you just can't, right? At certain depth, right? With certain materials. So that's why it's important. But if you had a physical object, say a rock that is physical, I mean, not physical, sorry. You had a solid object like a rock, you could drop that into the bottom of the Marianas Trench and it wouldn't like blow up into dust, right? Because there is no where for that crushing pressure to go. It's not going to cavitate that any voids inside of that stone. So if you had a vehicle that was nearly an entire computer with an outer shell that doesn't have very much airspace inside of it or none at all, like a drone that just has no space inside of there because you don't need air, you don't need anything like that. Say it has some sort of a liquid cooling mechanism or whatever it is, then yes, I believe you could take that thing down to 20,000, 30,000 feet and then straight back up and all that stuff, especially as Jeff has shown us a couple of years ago now that the U.S. government has patents for anti-gravity propulsion systems, which why would you need a patent for something that's not, according to physics, isn't, able to be created? But what if, now I can't account for something that happened 100 years ago or, in the 11th century, right? That's something, maybe that's something different entirely, but this is our attempt in the modern age to replicate that. Maybe there's a knowledge of beings or something like that, which we would like to replicate that technology as best as we could. Say like, yeah, no one's ever going to be Superman, obviously, but could we get to a technological advancement to the point where we could put on a helmet that shoots laser beams where it looks like it's shooting them out of our eyes, right? Or we can have x-ray vision through a type of nods sort of a thing that we wear on a helmet attachment, right? So that we could become like superhumans, but we're never going to become Superman, right? So ancient humans see that and they're like, I want to get to where that is, but we can't non-physically transmute ourselves into, or we can't transmute ourselves into non-physical beings. So what can we do in advances of technology so that we could do, we could shoot down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench and then all the way back up with a vehicle of some type? Well, obviously you can't do that with a person because you'd explode, right? You get the bends and then you die, right? And so you just can't, right? But if there is a physical object, a solid object, say it's a computer that has just a round shell around it. Now, that doesn't get into how you can get through the surface tension of water without making a ripple. That's magic. But, but that it is maybe phasing in and out of different planes. So when it comes to resistance of, say, surface tension of water, it just creates not a portal, but it has some sort of a phasing technology that just allows it to pass through. And then once you're in the water, you don't really have to worry. Once you're out of the water, you don't have to worry. It's just breaking that barrier, right? So, like, could we get to this point where we found out that the modern things that we're seeing are humans' best ability to replicate something that was observed in the past, or maybe is still observed, or maybe we're getting information from those things of whatever they are of how to do that with the limitations we have according to physics. You didn't stop me, so there wasn't a point where it started to make no sense.
I'm not gonna bite off that whole thing, but we'll talk about the replication vehicle, I guess we'll call it, right? Drone, because you're basically saying that this would just be a solid computer, right?
Sure.
It would have to, the material would have to be so dense, because
Right.
like if I took this laptop and threw it into the water and it went down the Mariana Trench, if we were ever able to recover it, I mean, it would be pretty much unrecognizable because it would be crushed.
I don't know about that because there was furniture in the Titanic.
Yeah, but that's not in the Marianas Trench, buddy.
No, but just like a submarine can get completely destroyed at that depth, but a grand piano can't.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe that's a bad example because there's no air.
Well,
physical voids of air and wood and wooden legs and things like that, right?
It would have, yeah, it would have to go down to how dense material is and all components of it. I think we're going down the wrong rabbit hole here. I disagree. We'll just go with that. I really like Hal Puthoff's theory of gravitational manipulation. I've talked about this on the episode where I talked about the external lights of UFOs and how Puthoff theorized that these are gravitational manipulation components, not necessarily lights. It's just perceived as lights by us because it's manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum. And what we're seeing is a bright whitish blue light coming off of these lights, and that is the non-ionizing side of the electromagnetic spectrum, which can also cause radiation symptoms in human flesh, or really any biological flesh at all. And that's why we get the Rendlesham incident where the people came across the craft in the woods of Rendlesham and started suffering radiation poisoning. This is
well, that happened in Elmwood too, didn't it?
I was just gonna say, Officer Wheeler, George Wheeler, ended up passing away a less than a year after his encounter with a bright blue light, and who knows what the process of whatever he observed that night, what the process that it was currently going through, activating one of these gravitational manipulation devices. And the whole concept behind Puthoff's theory. And by the way, if anybody wants a decent breakdown of it, now he doesn't do the best job at breaking down Hal Puthoff's theory, but yet again, Luis Elizondo's book Imminent, it does touch on it. Does it do a great job? No, it doesn't. I think I do a better job in my episode, but because I actually get into like the Doppler effect and
Sure.
you know, blue shift, red shift, and how that affects biologics and stuff. But I don't think that this. I don't even think we can't make a drone even that would basically work on this because it or work in this theory of the way that it moves. And I know that you talked about the um entering the water, the multi-domain travel as kind of magic, right? Not
Definitely.
I mean,
Magic.
if we can ever actually create a gravitational manipulation device that creates a gravitational manipulated bubble around an object, then it's not. It's very probable, right? And it's not saying that we can't ever do it if we ever understand the true nature of gravity. As soon as we understand it, creating something to manipulate it becomes easier.
Well,
I
what's to
mean,
say it hasn't already been understood and realized, and then they don't tell the masses because as far as we know, yeah, if I drop my vape, it's gonna hit the table.
and it could.
What else
You're
do I
right.
need to know?
You're right. You're
Yeah,
right. Okay, it could.
right.
That could be, in a sense, us fucking around with some advanced technology and science that has the capabilities of manipulating gravitational fields.
Mhm.
So I stand corrected. You're not wrong, actually. And in that case, it wouldn't have to be dense. You can literally put a human being inside of there, and there would be no G forces applied to the body. Um, Now, if one of those lights went out when they're
Wow.
traveling, they're instantly dead.
Yeah,
But
but that would be I mean, if you got to a point where you were doing that, I mean, it would be it's such a unlikely probability that the system fails on you, right? It's like, "Hey, just make sure your battery cells don't ever dip below 80%. You always keep them topped off because if it does, there's a possibility that you might get turned into basically nothing but carbon atoms in a matter of instantly." And it's just like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll try to keep that in mind. I'll write myself a sticky note." You know?
okay, just make
Okay.
sure because the person that you are will be the person that you're not ever going to be again.
You're right. Try to keep that in mind. It's like, "Oh, yeah. Thanks for the tip."
um, I don't know, man. I I think it was Admiral Gallaudet. I think is his name. Who's been coming forward on a lot of USO stuff. He's the submarine admiral that that went to a lot of those congressional hearings, and he's been talking about USOs. It was when he took the stand, I believe it was with Grush, um, that I really started thinking, okay, well, maybe USOs are a thing, and we have more on this than what we're saying, and not necessarily that it's a thing. I've always kind of thought that there is truth to the USO phenomena, but the fact that we have data on it, I always thought was possible. But now
Mhm.
I am very much on the side of it being probable that we have more information than what is said. There was just after I wrote this up, there was I gotta find it real quick. Um, there was news broken by somebody in Congress, I'm gonna say. Senator or Congressman, hold on. Burchett. Uh Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee during a November House Oversight Committee hearing UAP witness testimony and questioning highlighted accounts of UAP emerging. This is too much. Okay. This is from January 23rd, 2025. This is from the, hell, I'll just share the website. So
Share the
you guys,
website, dude.
Share the website, bro.
Dude, I want to see the website, bro. Share it. Oh, I see you. Oh, there you go. Hey, look, rats and bleach.
Right here.
This
Burchett
5-second
says
trick. This 5-second trick eliminates mites in your garage. What, pour bleach on them? Thanks, ads.
Anyways, Burchett says he
Wow.
believes aliens have underwater bases on Earth. This is from January 23rd. So I discovered this after I had already written this up. I probably would have put this into the write-up if I had it before writing it up. But I just, right here, quoted from Tim Burchett, right? I just think traveling light years, I think it happens. I think it's possible in the vastness of God's great universe. I mean, light years, you know, the light from those stars that we see at night left there before the time of Christ. Burchett said on former Rep Matt Gates' One America News show in a clip highlighted by Mediate. Tim Burchett, I'm just reading randomly here now. I think there's a cover-up. When they tell me something's moving at hundreds of miles an hour underwater and our capabilities and these things, this one was large as a football field underwater, and this was a documented case, and I have an admiral telling me this stuff. Yeah, in a nutshell, Representative Tim Burchett believes that there are alien bases in said ocean. And of course that's just one source. I can't remember this source. I read a couple articles on it, and there was some better quotes in some of those other articles. I just don't have the link for it. But
I mean,
anyways,
people say all kinds of stuff. Who's that general that was worried that so many soldiers deploying to an island was going to cause the island to flip over?
what? I don't no idea what you're talking about. No idea.
I'll look it up. You're gonna be like, your mind is gonna be blown.
Oh, that's hilarious, actually.
Oh no, it was a representative asking a general. Yeah, Guam. In 2010, Democrat Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia famously asked a U.S. admiral if the island of Guam would tip over and capsize due to overpopulation from a military buildup. The comment was made during a hearing, and though a spokesperson later claimed it was a joke or a metaphor for infrastructure strain, it was widely reported as a literal bizarre question. Dude, that guy was serious. He literally asked him, he's like, so you don't think that putting so many military members on one side of the island could cause it? And then he's just like, excuse me? Just 8,000 Marines on Guam on one side would cause the island to flip over like a plate in the water, because that's how islands work. They're floating. So I mean, representatives say all kinds of stuff, man. You know, it's
I gotta see this.
Oh, yeah.
If it's true, if that's true, and that person is in any congressional chambers, we need to not do that.
I'll send you the YouTube link, and you're gonna watch it and be blown away. Oh, I sent those books to you in your in Facebook too.
I seen them.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. You ready to do the outro? Yeah, you are. Look at you.
Yeah.
You're so
sure.
tired. So dude, that's it for this week.
We're an hour past our max limit, so yeah, let's do it.
Oh, we are. That sucks. All right. I could just cut out 2 of the stories.
No, we had good conversations. Just have either a long episode or release half of it today or like, you know, on Monday and half of it on Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah. No, we'll just release it at one. All right. So that's it for this week's Fringe News Briefing. We covered a lot of ground today. A study showing nearly 1,000 cases where Bigfoot and UFO sightings happened in the same place within 72 hours. Skinwalker Ranch, documenting invisible phenomena, mysterious signals, and underground anomalies. A former Bank of England analyst warning that alien disclosure could trigger financial collapse. And new research suggesting consciousness itself might be the brain resonating within the quantum vacuum. Then we went deep on USOs. The objects moving through our oceans at impossible speeds, transitioning between water and air like it's nothing. If the Navy's been tracking this for decades, if there are geographic patterns suggesting underwater bases, if these are the same craft we're seeing in our skies, then maybe we've been looking in the wrong direction this whole time. The ocean covers most of our planet, and we've barely explored it. If there's an intelligence operating here that wants to stay hidden, that's exactly where they'd be. So what do you think? Are we alone in our own oceans? Leave a comment, find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or YouTube. I want to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review. It really helps more people find the show. Next week, another briefing, 4 more stories from the fringes, another deep dive into something the mainstream won't touch. Until then, keep questioning, keep investigating. And remember, the most important mysteries aren't the ones we've solved. They're the ones we're brave enough to ask about. This has been Infinite Rabbit Hole. I'm Jeremy Sosha with Jacob Owens. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. If you're looking for more of our stuff, head on over to infiniterabbithole.com, where you can find links to all the podcast players that we are available on, and even our video platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. While you're there, make sure to check out all the links for our socials and hit that follow so you know when all the new stuff from our podcast comes out. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Goodbye.